So we're going to talk through today a few different things. And we're going to start effectively with what is most important to really understand. It's something I really want to communicate about how we go about our work as a product manager. Then we're going to talk about some tools. There's a lot of tools out there, but most of them are not that helpful for your day-to-day. So we're going to run through a bit of that. And then we're going to talk about how you communicate all of that. I mean, fundamentally, as a product manager, it's a weird position. You're not telling anyone what to do. There's not that nobody reports to you. Nobody walks up to you and says, like, gee, boss, what should I do today? I don't know if anyone actually does that ever anywhere, but they sure as hell don't do it for a product manager. So, quick intro on me. Sam gave me a quick one, but I'm a director of product management at Salesforce. Before that, I had ran my own startup and was head of product there. And basically what I run at Salesforce is search and lookups, our number 1 and number 6 most used components on the platform. We have north of 3 million daily active users. So I'm dealing with a lot of these issues that we're going to discuss here every day, and some of the challenges of being bombarded by a lot of different competing priorities. So this is the phrase I hate most in the entire world. And trust me, you can ask my new wife. She is firmly aware of this. I have to do this. You have to do that. Let's just be crystal clear. There's not a single thing in this world that you have to do. You don't have to go to the grocery store, but you want to have fresh produce at home. You don't have to go to the gym, but your pants might get a little tight after a while. You don't have to breathe, but you won't live very long. Okay? There are trade-offs, there are consequences, but you don't have to do anything. And the reason I hate have to is because it short-circuits what we do in product management. It completely undermines prioritization. Now, you're constantly making decisions in your life about priorities. And when you say that you have to do something, you are constantly making it the number 1 priority in your life. You're not thinking it through. It's just, I have to do this, so it's the number 1 priority. The trouble is, when you have too many number 1 priorities, it creates a lot of stress. When you feel a lot of stress, you make bad decisions. We got to take that out and take back the control. I mean, after a lifetime of have to, most people never get what they really want in life. Isn't it sad to imagine giving up the dream of your ideal life, your best life, for a lifetime of errands you have to run, jobs you have to do, social obligations you have to fulfill? It's messed up and it's not healthy. And in product, this relates directly to what we do as a product manager. With a mindset of consciously prioritizing everything in your life and everything in your product allows you to really take control of that product. Now, product management means different things in every different place. Every different company, every different product has a different understanding of what a product manager is. But there's one thing universally that the product manager is responsible for, and that's the product roadmap. What is my top priority to build? What is my next highest priority? How do we go about making this product better so we make our customers more successful and our company more successful? If you lose, and those roadmaps, they're in a constant state of revision. You're just turning it and turning it and turning it. That's what this is here. We're prioritizing, we're creating a roadmap, we're measuring, we're revising, we're constantly revising. And if you lose sight of the priorities for your product during that revision process, you're going to lose control of the product roadmap. And that's a failure as a product manager, a failure at the one thing that is 100% yours. So let's name some issues that might get in the way, that might be those have-to things. Some of the things that get in the way of shipping new features, new innovations, making your product better and your customers more successful over time. I'll start. Number 1 that comes to my mind, based largely on today, bugs. Bugs, more bugs. Everything is a bug. There's always a bug that you have to prioritize against what you're doing. What else is preventing you from working on what you think is the number 1 priority? Anybody? Tech debt. Great one. Sneaks up on you, doesn't it? What else? Excellent. Validation resources. Resourcing is a constant struggle. There's a million things that will prevent you from getting where you want to go. There's a lot of serious issues that will be presented as things you have to do. I'll even add another one here, strategic shifts, right? Some organizations can't figure out what they want to do more than a few months at a time. And that thing that you've been working on for 6 months and has 3 months to go, suddenly it's not a strategic priority, and you got to figure that out a little bit. So there's huge groundswells as well as these little paper cuts that build up. All of these things are urgent. Some of them will be important. As product managers, we earn our money balancing competing priorities. So when you look at these things that are urgent, you need to tease out what's important and then find the right balance in order to keep your product moving forward. So what's important? That's actually a really big question. What is important in a product, in a company? It's going to change a lot. But I would say that it's whatever makes your customers more successful over time. So sometimes the things we just talked about are important, and sometimes they're not. But the first step to recognizing what's important is first recognizing all your options. And to do that, we need to shift our mindsets into this state of being conscious of the prioritization that we're doing implicitly day after day. Remember, I said I hate the phrase have to because you are implicitly or unconsciously prioritizing. It makes something a top priority without you thinking about it. But in truth, everything has knowable consequences. You may not know all the consequences. There might be risks associated with different pieces of it. But it has knowable consequences. You can take a pretty good shot at it. When you uncover an issue related to your product, make it your business to know the consequences of all the different options in front of you. And then you can constantly prioritize. Let me give you an example. Customer support calls you. This customer is having a terrible issue with your product. There's a really bad bug in it. You have to fix it right away because they are breathing down my neck. Now, they might be right. It might actually be something that you need to fix right away. It might be urgent and important. But you don't know that when you feel the heat. You know that when you dive deeper into the problem. You ask questions about what's really going on. And then you understand a little bit more about the fuller context of what's happening. Is this a problem for one customer? Is it a problem for every customer? Is it a business stopping problem? Or is it a pain in the butt that has a known workaround? Maybe a partial solution is all you're really going to need. Maybe just tweak a little thing here. We'll go and clean it up some other time. But it doesn't have to derail something that's going on. Now, you got to be careful. You build up tech debt if you don't actually go back to those things. But sometimes the timeline is really as important as what gets done. The order of operations in that sequence can be really critical to keep big initiatives on track and not let paper cuts drag it all down. So pretty quickly, you'll learn whether that bug is a higher priority than other items on your roadmap, but you won't know if you just respond to have to. So to summarize really quickly, in order to get this mind shift that puts us in a place to be really strong product managers, for our aspiring product managers to interview really well and present yourself as somebody who knows what this job is all about, you've got to start with resisting these distractions, focusing on the important, and some of that is digging in on it. We're going to talk about some of the tools to understand this, and making conscious decisions. Get rid of that have to, and make sure that you know in and out everything that's on your product roadmap and why the top priority is the top priority. So what? So it's probably the question in most of your minds right now. So what? How does this help me be more successful as a product manager? How does it help me get a job, get a promotion, make my product better, build a great company? What is this airy-fairy philosophy stuff have to do with me? How does it directly relate? The moment you are conscious of all the options in front of you, you finally have the capability to pick the right path. The right path is the one that makes you more successful. Hopefully, if your incentives are right, by making your customer more successful over time. And that best path is what leads to those best outcomes for you. The ability to pick the right path from a variety of options while under pressure is the principal qualification of a leader. That's what you got to strive towards. And if you don't have the right mentality, you're never going to be able to get there. Applying these lessons to product management will make you better in your role. It'll make you more employable, make you more promotable. It'll make you more content in the work that you're doing, because you'll know that the work you're doing is the most important work that you could be doing. And when you become conscious of how you are prioritizing, how you're really doing it in your head, you also become capable of communicating in a powerful new way, right? So remember, we talked about how PMs don't get to tell anyone what to do. You lead without authority. You basically have to convince people that what you believe is the right path, and what hopefully you've proven is the right path, is where they should follow you. That's a dialogue. It's happening all the time, but that's where it is. You don't get to be a general on the battlefield. You win by understanding all the variables. You win by balancing the equation to find what will make customers most successful. And you win by keeping everyone pulling in the same direction. That's winning as a product leader. That's building success. And you get there by being conscious and leading your team to what matters, not by being pulled in a bunch of different directions. You have to buffet the team from that. You have to protect them a little bit. So let's move a little bit past where our mind is supposed to be into how am I translating this into day-to-day success, right? So once I have this mind share and I'm able to recognize all of the options in front of me, now I can make smarter decisions. And we're going to get into some specifics on tools that are going to help you on the day-to-day, because I find that a lot of what gets out there isn't all that practical. We're going to talk about how we communicate better. Again, you've got to bring everyone along with you. And in order to do that, and explain to and help them really believe with you that you're doing the right thing, you got to communicate really effectively. And that's going to lead us to win more. It's going to lead us to win more as candidates, as professionals, as companies. So decision-making tools, we're going to go over this really briefly, because decision-making tools for product are geared way overweighted towards making huge decisions, right? Should we launch this product at all? Should we enter a new market? What company should we buy to bolster our product line? These are the big, big decisions that these sort of tools help you with. And if you're making these decisions every day, these are just a few of my favorite tools for that. You don't really need 100 of these in your back pocket. You need a handful. Internalize it, understand when to apply it, and then move past it. Because in order to be successful, you need to be able to be good at the 99% of decisions that are tactical, not strategic. So we've decided to launch this product. Great. We did this whole big thing about should we launch this product. Now we've decided. So what's the minimum viable version of that product? Which aspects of it should we tackle first? How do we balance what we're building against urgent maintenance issues and supporting what's already there? How do we just get everyone on the same page, moving in the same direction so we can finally make progress, right? That's where we need to go. And so these are some of the tools for success every day. I think that they are much less commonly understood, and this is where I get a lot of value when I do startup advising and that sort of thing. And they're more important to your everyday success, frankly. So it's a toolbox of simpler concepts to help you frame trade-offs. It's the building block for making the decision well as communicating it effectively. So before we get into some really specific tools, let's just answer the number one question that you will receive day after day after day as a product leader, or really in any role. I'd like you to do more in the same amount of time. Now, you can say it with me, do more, same amount of time. Doesn't really work. This, as a product manager, this is not your job. Optimizing engineering teams and processes, optimizing development, that is the third rail of product management. Do not touch it or you will get burned. You will alienate your colleagues. You will be out of your depth. Just, you don't get to mess with that. But what you do get to do is explain to everyone that this is the basic formula underlying every product initiative. What you get is your resources times your time. It's not a perfectly elastic equation. There's ramp-up time. There's lots of other issues. But honestly, that just makes it worse for most situations. And I've had a lot of success using this sort of communication tool internally between product managers. When somebody's incentives are different than your incentives, and they really are just pushing. I know it's hard, but can you just ride the team and make this happen? Hey, man. It's resource times time. Do you have any more resources to give me? Can we change the time frame or the deadlines of this project? Then this is the output you're going to get. And I've actually had a lot of success doing this with customers as well. Anyone who lives or works around downtown knows that just last week was Dreamforce. As a Salesforce employee, that is pretty much everything we do. Our entire company is built to stop traffic in the financial district. That's our primary product. But I had conversations with customers talking exactly this way. And that's where the transparency and knowing your prioritization backwards and forwards really helps out. Because a customer will come to you and they'll say, I need you to do this. This is business critical for me. And we'll say, is it really business critical? Okay, we got some workarounds. Maybe we're not actually totally hosing your business. We're being a little dramatic so that we'll pay more attention to you. And that's fine. I do the same thing. But, hey, these are the things I'm working on. What would you have me shift out? I don't have more resources. Our timeline is what I've already communicated to you. So what would you drop in order to bring this other thing in? And, people aren't trying to be jerks. They just have different incentives than you have. They have different priorities than you have. So in order to bring them along with you, you just need to communicate this well. And sometimes it's something as simple as this is how you communicate that. Every change to your product roadmap is going to be a trade-off because there's very rarely actually flexibility in resources or time. So unless you have more resources coming or an extending deadline, adding new output means subtracting something else. And you do not want to leave open disagreements, right? Those sorts of things fester. If you need to escalate the issue to find a common understanding or a resolution, that's better than just letting it be tension between you and your colleagues that builds up over time. Either you convince the other person of your prioritization or they convince you of theirs. Sales made either way. Good news is that unlike running an illegal boiler room, for those of you who actually remember the plot of this movie, this is not zero sum. What we do, if a colleague is able to convince you or a customer is able to convince you that what they think should be your top priority is more important than what you have as your top priority, they have done your job for you. They have helped you be more successful because all that really matters is getting the right product roadmap. That's your job. So you need to have these conversations, but remember, it's not about winning. It's not about competing. It is about getting better. It's back to that cycle that we talked about of measure, refine, and revise. That's the job over and over again. And sometimes that refining and revising is a result of these conversations. It's a result of these debates. So your colleagues will push you to measure, refine, and revise your roadmap, just as your customers will. So let's talk about some of the tools for every day that are actually going to make these conversations useful to you. And here, if anyone is finding some of these tools not helpful or confusing or whatever, just speak up. You're not going to throw me off my game. We're just going to walk through these because these are the sorts of things, and it's an example. These are the kind of things you need to have in your toolbox in order to have these conversations really effectively, and then to rely on those for communication. So, strategic context. Sometimes the fastest way to close a conversation is to tie your project to a much larger, more important initiative for the company. Hey, I'm working on this piece, and I understand that piece might sound unimportant to you, but it is critical for the launch of this new product, which is a strategic priority for our company, right? Pulling in a strategic context is a really simple way to have those conversations, and it's a very easy way for your colleagues to understand you and for your customers to understand what's going on. Because your customers, if your strategic priority is good, are excited about that big new thing. And if it's really good, they'll tolerate a little friction along the way. Stakeholder success is a really important tool for thinking through these pieces. As we've mentioned a couple times, other people will have different priorities than you do. They will have different incentives. They will be judged on different measures, and they will be looking for different things. Think through, before you have these conversations, what is success to each of the stakeholders in this project? How do we make every stakeholder along the way, how do I understand their incentives and in order to anticipate their needs, in order to anticipate how I can help them without ruining my thing? How do you make sure that you are actually staying focused on delivering value to the right places? You've got to constantly think through that stakeholder success for internal customers, external customers, colleagues, engineering partners, whomever. If you're understanding things from their perspective, you're going to have a much more productive conversation. You can think this through much more effectively. Cost versus benefit, really simple tool. Again, most of you are going to be familiar with these, but we often find ourselves looking for something more complicated to solve what is really a pretty simple problem. When you need everyday solutions, you need something that's lightweight, understandable, and that you can communicate and crank out over and over again to make decisions 10 times a day. A cost-benefit analysis is the simplest thing. This is going to help 100 customers who have a total of 1,000 users for 1 minute a week, right? Oh, great. We've got 1,000 minutes saved a week. This other thing is going to unblock critical access for a whole new wave of customers. It's going to create productivity and revenue gains, right? And they have approximately equal cost. Okay, if my benefits don't line up, my costs do, then I know I need to go for the higher benefit thing. It's just a really simple way to do it. I don't recommend sort of a pros cons list. You can do a evaluated version of that, but people get trapped in the pros cons because if I have more pros than cons, then I think the pros win, but they don't. Sometimes some of those pros are totally unimportant, and your con is that, I don't know, everything explodes. So it can be, so keep an eye on that one. Just doing a simple cost benefit saves paper and gives you a little bit real clarity into what are you getting and what is it costing you. And then a 2x2, visualizing your thoughts, the simple 2x2, figure out what your axes are and how these different pieces intersect. Quick tip, if you're communicating this to colleagues, 90% of the conversation and the work happens in defining what your axes are. It's not actually, do I believe that one thing is total garbage. It's like, is it productivity versus cost to serve? Are those the two axes here that we need to figure out? Or is it something totally different? Defining the axes is the biggest thought process there, and it'll really narrow you down on what matters. So these are just some simple tools. I recommend, if you don't use these every day, add them to your tool belt. Break them out every day. I think you'll find that once you are able to think about all the different priorities, get yourself out of this chasing chasing whatever's urgent, and settle down with something. A simple exercise like this will keep you moving in the right direction. Now, once you are making better trade-offs, once you're doing these trade-offs 100 times a day with a rigorous approach, now you need to understand how to communicate better. And many conversations, even in business, are driven primarily by competing emotional points of view. It's another team is getting yelled at for something, and they need you to collaborate in order to get it done. Now it's not really about the business. It's like, hey man, are you going to help me out, or are you going to screw me over? Right? It's that emotional piece. It resonates, right? A lot of conversations are about the subtext. They're about that personal relationship. And disagreement can quickly become conflict when it's actually a discussion about two people's relationship rather than a discussion about a business priority or a project. Break out of that loop by focusing on the implications of competing priorities, not the personal or emotional aspects of it. And actually, this is where leaning on data can be a huge asset. Leaning on data is important for every decision, but it can really diffuse a situation because data is difficult to argue with, and it's incredibly boring. And so when you're arguing about how did you define that metric and should that really be the denominator, it's super hard to get worked up emotionally about that. So it takes the heat out of those inevitable disagreements, and that's vital to preserving productive working relationships over time, because you're going to have to come to an agreement with people to whom you are saying no. Over and over, 90% of the time, 9 out of 10 times, somebody comes to you with a request, nope, can't do it. Nope, 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 nope. Maybe next year. That's about like the best case scenario for that, right? So you need to become conscious of how you prioritize so that you can communicate, then make that trade-off in a rational way with whatever kind of lightweight tool helps you understand it, and then communicate it effectively, because you become more effective as a product manager. You preserve your relationships from conflict, and you're creating the best possible version of your product by balancing the short and the long-term priorities as well as those collaboration points. So, and by the way, when you apply the same principles to your daily life, you also pave the way to become the best possible version of yourself. So you're understanding what you're really going after in life. I think about that a lot whenever someone tells me they don't have time for something. That to me is immediately like, okay, it's not a priority for you, right? Everyone knows how much time they have. Everyone knows how much resources they have. It's either a priority or it's not. Now, remember with these things, with this communication, and we're going to go a little more into this, it's not actually about the decision itself. Success is about how you get to the decision in this context, because you have to bring everyone along with you. If you can clearly explain your approach to decision making, you can ensure a productive conversation on your terms without you're not going to let anything get out of hand. I'm aware of all these situations. Simple cost-benefit analysis, simple 2x2, something like that. And then let's look at the data, let's look at the information. Help me understand how you would change my roadmap to accommodate this when we look at the numbers, when we look at the data. And if they talk you into it, then you're even better for that. So these are pretty simple, but I honestly walk myself through it before every big meeting, because it's really easy to drop one of these along the way. Prepare. Most people do not prepare for most meetings because they are busy. They have things to do, and so they just walk in and are like, what's this meeting about? Great, I disagree. There's just no substitute for thinking through that other person's point of view and thinking through that stakeholder success, coming in prepared, coming in understanding the dimensions of your 2x2, coming in understanding what's success for them and how you can work with that. Empathizing. You don't have to be a jerk about it. Again, you're going to be saying no most of the time. If you don't learn to say no in a really nice, empathetic way, it's going to be a tough road to hoe. Bring data. It is the fastest way to get out of that meeting 15 minutes early and with everybody on the same page. And build relationships. It's a lot easier to work with friends, and it's a lot more satisfying in the end. These conversations can be difficult. If you don't have anything to relate to that person on, it becomes much more difficult. So a little word on preparation, data, And I think one of the biggest, probably the biggest pitfall, especially for new product managers, until you get smacked down a few times. Don't try to be Steve Jobs. You're not Steve Jobs. Product managers love to imagine that they do not need to prepare, they do not need to bring data, they do not need to empathize with their customer, their stakeholders, because you, my friend, are visionary. You see where the world is going. Other people just don't see it. Now, it's funny when it's somebody else. It really sucks when it's you. So I get it. Other people can't understand because you are visionary. And once in a long while, if you're good, that will be true. 1 in 100 times, you will be onto something that other people don't see. And you'll feel it in your gut, and you'll have to fight for it. But 99 times out of 100, it's just heartburn. The customer knows exactly what they want, and they really don't need you to sell them some future gadget that's going to solve all their problems and grow back their bald spot while you're at it. Right? So 99% of the time, your users are right. Remember that ratio. And when you're feeling this, ask yourself, am I pursuing something visionary that I believe in deeply, or am I being stubborn? It's genuinely a major pitfall, and it is an immediate turnoff in any product management interview. I've interviewed hundreds of product managers or aspiring product managers. It is when somebody tells you that they know where the market's going, that they understand what customers don't, and therefore talking to the customer is either less important or listening to the customer is only a minor input. And I hear it all the time. Total red flag. Ding. Moving on to the next one, because I don't need a team of imaginary visionaries. I need a team of people who are willing to put in the hard work, listen, empathize, do the research, make their trade-offs, make their decisions in a way that's understandable and communicable, and then who are then going to work together as part of a team. That's how our company is moving forward. That's how our team is moving forward. So, and then most importantly, don't try to beat anyone. We talked about how there's this trade-off, there's this I sell you or you sell me, but you don't need to beat anybody. Product management is not done effectively through a series of battles. Either it's a long-term relationship. You either succeed or fail together. All of these things need to work nicely together. If you build yourself a beautiful ivory tower, you will not be successful. So, it all fits back into this ball here. We are prioritizing, creating our roadmap. We're measuring outcomes, refining the approach, revising the roadmap again and again and again. And every time, you're just making it a little bit better, your product's getting better, and you're getting better as a product manager and as a professional. All right, so we talked at the beginning a little bit about the mentality, the mindset that you need in order to be in a position to make these trade-offs effectively. Now we understand a little bit of tools about how do I balance my trade-offs, how do I communicate those trade-offs clearly and effectively in a way that's collaborative, so that we all just keep getting better step after step, instead of keep getting angrier with one another, more frustrated, more lost and further away from our customers. So, when you are conscious of every competing factor, you balance them fairly to make defensible decisions, and you frame product conversations constructively, you will win more in every sense of this job. Your product will be more successful, your customers will be more successful, and colleagues will view you as a product leader, not just somebody doing a job.